Welcome everyone to Sama's first quarterly impact call. I'm Leila Toplic, VP of Marketing and Partnerships at Sama Group, and I'll be guiding you through this call. Today we'll be sharing results and key learnings from Q1 for Samasource, Samaschool, and Samahope. This is an update to what we recently published in our 2014 annual report, which can be found by scrolling to the bottom of the page at samagroup.co/impact. If you'd like to ask a question during the call, please share with us via Twitter at Sama Group using hashtag SamaQ1Impact. Before we get started, I'd like to take a minute to highlight the fact that we're joined by people from all over the world, including our employees, our customers, donors, partners, alumni, board members, and many others that make up our broader Sama community. Thank you for making this call a priority in your busy schedules. I'm here in San Francisco with our leadership team, and we'll quickly introduce you to the folks you'll hear from today. Leila Janah, founder and CEO of Sama Group. Tony McDonald, Chief Financial Officer of Sama Group. Tess Bosner, Managing Director of Samaschool, and Shivani Garg-Patel, co-founder of Samahope. It is my pleasure to now hand things over to Leila Janah, founder and CEO of Sama Group.
Thanks, Leila, and welcome everyone. We are so happy that you're here. This is a new experiment for us. We are trying to bring the same level of transparency and outcomes reporting to our nonprofit work as you might see in public companies with quarterly earnings calls. So please bear with us. This is our first one of these calls, and we hope we get input from you as we go. So what we care most about at Sama is measuring outcomes, seeing how effective we are at moving people from a certain baseline to an improved state. For two of our programs, Samasource and Samaschool, we do that through a model that we call impact sourcing, which is connecting marginalized people to digital work. Samasource does that through connecting them to active contracts with large technology and data companies. And these contracts pay workers a living wage in places with really high rates of unemployment. Samaschool does that through a slightly different model and slightly different geographies by providing low-income people with the skills to succeed in the new economy. And Samahope, our third program, has a slightly different model, which is using technology to provide direct funding to doctors working on the ground on critical medical care. Measuring impact has always been a really important aspect of what we do at Sama, and because we've had additional resources in the last couple of years, we've been able to do a lot more in-depth survey work on our data, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. We have a dedicated team that monitors impact, a team of 3, and this team does everything from ensuring that the people who come into our programs meet our baseline criteria. So our model isn't really effective if we're not bringing in people who are marginalized in some way and who meet our baseline thresholds. And they also look at how those people grow over time, both while they're in Sama programs and, importantly, once they've graduated or finished their time with us. At Samasource, our core surveying system looks at data from a worker before Sama, so at the time of their onboarding, what their life was like before we encountered them, and during their tenure. And we do that midway through their tenure and then at the end of their tenure. We then look at how their lives evolve after they've left us. So we just completed our first surveys for people who are 3 years out of our programs. Samaschool surveying system is similar. We capture data from trainees pre-Samaschool entering our program during the course of their training and upon exit. And because this program is newer, we only have data following our training that reaches the 12-month mark. Samahope surveys our doctors and medical partners almost on a monthly basis, and one of the challenges with the model here is that a lot of the patients, because they're so low income, don't have a way to communicate or connect with us after they leave the doctor's facility. We have the benefit with Samaschool and Samasource of having direct connections with our workers and trainees because of the nature of internet-based work, and we've used really interesting methods such as mobile phone surveying and even Facebook to keep track of these workers. We then publish our findings quarterly and pull these all together for our annual reports. And all this information can be found at the bottom of our impact page at samagroup.co/impact. And we'll also share the link with everyone after this call. To date, We've counted that over 29,000 people, 29,094 to be exact, have benefited from Sama. And we divide that impact into 3 groups. So Samasource has given jobs to 6,527 people through the contracts I mentioned earlier. And if you include their direct income dependents, so the people who live in their households and directly benefit from their earned income, that number grows to just over 20,000 people, 20,168. At Samahope, over 1,975 women and children have gained access to and benefited from life-changing medical care that ranges from a fistula surgery down to access to a safe birth and a safe birth kit. And at Samaschool, we've trained 424 people who now have digital skills required to access opportunity through the new economy, through all these new websites that provide access to new streams of income through the digital economy. So we're outcomes driven. We have a lot yet to learn, but we're hoping that we continue with this method of impact measurement so that we can eventually report out on a lot more detailed outcomes for our beneficiaries. And long term, our goal is to be a really competitive destination for charitable dollars. So we want our programs to compete with the best programs and for there to be a degree of competition and transparency in our sector, which we think is the best thing for our beneficiaries. Before I hand it over to Tony to drill down into Samasource numbers, I wanted to introduce the newest member of our management team, Wendy Gonzalez. Wendy is joining as the managing director of Samasource to help grow our enterprise services and take us hopefully one day to break even off of earned revenue as a social enterprise.
Thank you, Leila. I'm really excited to be here.
Thanks, Wendy. All right, I'll hand it off to Tony.
Thanks, Leila. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the impact measures that Leila talked about and dive into some of our outcomes measures for the post-Sama workers that we have in our that we've surveyed over 2013 and 2014. Last year, we repeated a survey of our former workers to measure their employment statuses up to 3 years after leaving our work programs. And from a sample of 192 former workers surveyed in both Kenya and India over the past 2 years, we found that not only did 86% of these former workers enjoy favorable outcomes in finding further employment or attending school, or both, but their average incomes continued to increase each successive year outside of our program. So that by their 3rd year out, they reported an average annual earnings of $3,000 a year. Now, this doesn't sound like much, but keep in mind that the population of workers we hire are earning just over $2 a day before they join us, which is below the poverty line in the regions that we work in. This translates into $804 a year. And compared to the $3,000 that they end up earning by their 3rd year out, that's a 3.7 times increase in their annual average income. Now, we have limited peer organization data from which we can compare to, but when we look at some data that the Grameen Foundation has reported relative to their microfinance program in Bangladesh, they report a 43% income increase for their program. We have 370% increases so far over a very limited amount of time that shows there is depth of impact and, from what we can see, a permanent change to the lives of the people that work for us. Now, this is initial data, and we are just gearing up for our 3rd post-Sama survey that we're starting up this month to expand our findings and understand more detail about this program result. On to Q1 results. As you can see, we fell short of our goals for Q1 2015. Now, there are 2 trends that started in 2014 that have continued that have resulted in this shortfall. The first is actually a positive outcome. We are seeing, because of our growth in our earned revenue and the increase in stable, large contracts with enterprise customers, much less volatility in our project work and more long-term steady work from these customers. That has resulted in less natural attrition and more stability in our workforce. On the data, the tenure of our average worker was under 4 months at the start of Q1 2014, and at the end of Q1 2015 stood at over 12 months. It's a significant increase in tenure. The second trend that has impacted the new worker count that we're reporting is the fact that we've seen a very slight but steady decrease in the volume of work since August of 2014. And as you can imagine, that decrease and the fact that we've got a natural attrition rate that's dropped has required less new workers. Together, these two trends have resulted in us falling short of our new worker count. However, when we look at the trend of the tenure increase, we are positive on the fact that this is a good outcome for the depth of impact that we're creating and that I just spoke to in the previous comment. Now, the trend of increased tenure allows us to increase the services, it upskills our workforce, and allows us to have better customer satisfaction and results, and hopefully increase the service offerings that we plan on providing. Back to the drivers of the decrease in volumes, we saw two customers specifically have a lot less volume with us in Q1 than planned. We actually expect that to continue into Q2. However, we are seeing increased volumes that are offsetting this decrease so that our net revenue and net impact results in Q2 will be more favorable than Q1. Together with that volume growth and the fact that we are looking at expanding the distribution and delivery center network, we expect to see higher worker counts for the rest of 2015. And now I'm going to turn it over to Tess Posner, the Managing Director of Samaschool.
Thanks, Tony. Our goal at Samaschool is to help low-income people find employment in the new economy. We do this by providing training and digital skills in high-demand occupations, like social media marketing, customer support, work readiness, and soft skills. We set up training centers in communities with high rates of poverty and unemployment, and we recruit these students into our intensive trainings from local partners like community colleges and community-based organizations. We started in San Francisco in 2013, and since then have grown to serving 6 cities across the US. And we've recently launched a series of online courses and expanded internationally into East Africa. Our primary measure of impact is looking at our graduates' post-program employment rates. We measure this through surveys, interviews, and assessments, and we look at their wages, hours, and income earned. Our secondary metrics include program retention, how long people actually stay in the program and graduate, skill development, and increases in their confidence. We try to use an experimental and data-driven approach in everything that we do, not only to track our effectiveness, but also to drive organizational learning and faster program improvement. Going to our Q1 performance, I want to highlight a couple of numbers. Our goal was to increase the numbers trained in all 3 of our programs, US, online, and Kenya, to serving 600 students. We fell below these target numbers trained. We only graduated 73 students in Kenya and enrolled 129 students in our US and online programs. Not meeting this goal was mostly due to partner capacity issues and how many students were able to be trained at a time, as well as a pivot that we made with the online learning platform that we're using to host our online courses. We're also falling 33% below our goal of 65% post-program employment rates for our US model. We're implementing significant program changes to address this. We're seeing really exciting early results in our Kenya programs. We're exceeding our post-program employment rate target by 6%, and we're actually seeing this trend for our graduates after only a few weeks past graduation. Though we had slower growth than we expected, we did add new partnerships to build towards greater scale, and we expect to meet our goals this quarter. We launched our 6th site in the US in East Palo Alto. We also grew from 1 to 5 partner training sites in Kenya, and we launched new courses online. We're also continuing to see increasing demand for the skills that our program provides from both partner organizations and the communities and students that we serve. We're now just collecting longer-term outcome data on our students in the US, as we're only about a year out of pilot phase. But we're seeing really exciting increases in income earned. We're seeing that nearly 30% increases in starting wages after only 10 weeks of training for our students. This is really significant because over 70% of our students come to us unemployed, and many have been unemployed for 6 months or more. Although we are seeing these strong outcomes for the graduates that are successful, we're focused on increasing the number of students who get employed after the program. This has been a real challenge as the global digital work marketplaces grow and our students continue to face greater competition. We're iterating on our curriculum to address this by adding more intensive skills training and exploring employer partnerships. For this quarter of 2015, in addition to the focus on curriculum that I just mentioned, we're also focusing on adding new channels to grow our student enrollment numbers online to really drive those up because of the delay we experienced this quarter. We will be taking our very own Sama bus to low-income communities to spread the word about our online classes and the benefits of digital work and signing students up online on the bus. We're also finalizing our 5-year strategic and growth plan and are exploring new earned revenue streams to help diversify our funding and build towards longer-term sustainability. We'd love to hear from you, and we look forward to hearing your feedback and questions. And now I'm going to turn it over to Shivani, the Managing Director of Samahope.
Thanks, Tess. So at Samahope, we believe that by increasing the capacity of local medical partners increases access to critical medical care, ultimately reducing maternal and child mortality rates globally. We invest in local doctors, nurses, and health workers, and the organizations that are providing access to high-quality care for the poorest of the poor. We currently have 19 doctors in 12 countries, with a particular emphasis in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. And in order to measure our impact around increasing the capacity of those partners, we measure the number of patients treated, the number of new providers trained, and key infrastructure funded. Our metrics are evolving to include prenatal, at-birth, and postnatal care measures. And we measure everything directly from our medical partners, as Leila mentioned at the start of the call. We do this on a monthly and quarterly basis with validation from multiple sources. They include patient records, receipts, interviews, and site visits. In Q1, we set out to fund treatments for 1,500 patients and surpassed that with 1,975 patients treated. We also sought to add 2 to 3 additional medical partners upon completion of our rigorous diligence process. And we've added partners in Ghana and Malawi. We also sought growth with additional partners to help scale our work. These include corporate partners like Cigna and Virgin, and academic partners like the Columbia Earth Institute. At the end of Q1, we saw highlights with over an 8x year-over-year growth in the number of funded patients. We also saw expansion in India and our program there, and growth in investments in training of local medical talent and critical infrastructure. These are keys to deepening our impact at Samahope. One of our challenges was that we found that in order to scale our impact and the speed of growth, we need to diversify our sources of funding for our local partners. This means forming more partnerships with institutional and corporate organizations and moving beyond crowdfunding alone. As next steps, we seek to refine our impact plan to support our deeper impact for our medical partners and patient beneficiaries. We also plan to focus on areas of priority growth, including specific geographies and types of capacity building investments. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks to the leadership team for their presentations. We'll now open up the floor for any questions. To kick off the Q&A, we've selected a handful of questions that were submitted to us over the past couple of weeks. If you'd like to ask a question now, please share with us via Twitter @SamaGroup using hashtag SamaQ1Impact. If your question does not get read during the call today, you can email me at leila.toplic@samagroup.co. Our first question is a broader Sama question, and here it is. How are you tracking your programs financially? I will address it to Tony and Leila.
Thanks, Leila. The way that we track our financials is by having separate financials for each program as if they were separate organizations. And for the first time, we've reported those financials on the Sama Group website in our annual report section. And we'd invite all our constituents to take a look at those financial reports and annual reports for 2014.
Thank you, Tony. The next question is about Samasource. Samasource, if you earn revenue, why do you need donations? And can you talk about your plans for long-term financial sustainability?
Sure, this is Leila here. I can talk about that. We've often been asked not just why we need donations, but why we're a nonprofit and not a for-profit. When I founded Samasource back in 2008, the B Corporation movement and the linked impact investing community was much, much smaller. There weren't as many proof points as there are today. And I didn't see it as a viable option for getting a social enterprise off the ground whose overt mission was to move people out of poverty first and then do that through our business model second. I subscribe to Muhammad Yunus's idea of social business as being ideally a non-loss, we're working on it, and a non-dividend kind of company. So we set up as a nonprofit so that we could maintain the primacy of our social mission while also really pushing ourselves to be as sustainable as possible and not to rely on donations unless we really needed to. We've really tried to view donations the way a startup would view venture capital as initial funding, and have tried as hard as we can to get to sustainability. We're still not there. I think a big part of that is that our model was really new when we started it. Our business model, not only the geographies that we were working in, and we also work with a population that requires some additional help, and that costs something more than what a typical company would provide. So the types of people that we recruit into our programs require this initial investment. I think with the development of Samaschool and some exciting new potential funding streams for Samaschool, we might be able to have more of that kind of investment come from the Samaschool side and move Samasource closer to financial sustainability off of earned income. Our main plan for that is to bring in leadership that has more expertise in the outsourcing industry, and that's partly why we brought on Wendy. And we're also looking to deeper our engagements with enterprise customers that include Google and Microsoft, and that's been a big part of our strategy over the last year and a half. So far, we've made some pretty good progress as a nonprofit. We're over 50% at the group level, 50% funded by earned revenue 6.5 years in. And if you look at Samasource's P&L, the proportion of our expenses which are covered by earned income are even greater than that.
Great, thank you so much, Leila. The next question is for Samaschool. So Tess, what have you learned about the future work that has helped inform Samaschool program?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've learned over the past 2 years is that we continue to see that the pace of change in the economy is increasing. The skills that employers are looking for and are demanding are evolving very quickly and faster each year. And also in the digital workspace, there's a lot of increasing changes like new online work platforms cropping up or existing online work platforms that are changing their features and the way that you get work and also pivoting. And so what we've learned is that really the core competency of the new economy is learning how to learn and continuously increase your skills. We try to build this into all of our training models. We teach students how to use the internet to learn new skills and teach them really the value of continuously updating their skills and knowing how to market themselves. These skills are going to take them not only in just the next job or the next career, but throughout their whole career, especially as work in the economy continues to change.
Thank you, Tess. The next question is for Samahope. Shivani, what does your shift away from crowdfunding mean for the future of the organization? And it seems like the other two ventures, Samasource and Samaschool, focus on impact sourcing. And how does Samahope tie in?
Yeah, so those are great questions. So we're not actually moving away from the crowdfunding model. The website samahope.org is still key to how we engage with our citizen donors. For example, when the tragic earthquake hit in Nepal last month, the Samahope community came together to raise over $20,000 within the first 24 hours. And that was enough to be able to actually build an entire healthcare facility that had been destroyed in a rural area in Nepal. So it's critical that we continue to maintain our crowdfunding site. But as a startup, we have to reflect on what's the best path to scale. And we realize that diversifying our portfolio is key. So that's the reason why we have an added focus on other donor types, namely institutional and corporate partnerships. To answer the second question, at Sama Group, one of the key things that I believe is core to the group is that we enable access to economic progress. And when we started Samahope, we sought out debilitating yet treatable conditions that women and children were suffering from. So by providing access to those treatments, we're enabling these women to actually get back to work and these children to go to school. that leads to impact on those families, those communities, and ultimately economic progress.
Thank you, Shivani. The next question is from a participant. Thank you so much for submitting a question. It is for Samasource. When it comes to the people we employ, what does success look like? Is the goal for them to work for you for years, or for them to be able to find work elsewhere? Tony, would you like to address that question?
I can answer that question. I think from an impact point of view, what we're looking for is to have the maximum impact on every individual that joins us at Samasource. And what that means is that we will find ourselves with workers that stay for a short amount of time and get a benefit for the rest of their lives. And then there'll be a population of workers that will stay with us for longer, that will continue to upskill. Either way, our goal is to make sure that the net return on the amount of investment from a donor point of view we provide creates the maximum societal benefit and the maximum structural change within the development areas that we're focused on. We do think it's important for us to have a variety of tenure and some people that work with us for a short amount of time and some people that work for us for a very long time. However, we have not yet had the experience to understand which variables create the largest amount of impact. And as we move up in tenure, we will discover what we hope to be the sweet spot of where we create the maximum impact.
Thank you, Tony. Our next question, and possibly the last question for this call, is for Samaschool. Tess, could you talk about the average increase in wages post-Samaschool and also the baseline student income?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, we're still collecting long-term data, but I'll share what we're seeing so far. First, to start with the baseline, 70% of students come to us unemployed. For those that are working, they're making income that is below the US poverty line. This is $23,050 in yearly income for a family of 4. And this is around $11,100 for an individual. We're seeing so far that after our program, students are earning about $500 per month in supplemental income, which is about $1,500 in the first 3 months. For someone that's trying to get through community college or afford gas to take their child to childcare, this can be life-changing and is really just the beginning. And I want to quickly highlight one of our students who had a part-time job working at a gas station and had to drive really far outside of her hometown to make it to work every day. And she was, after our program, was able to get a job as a virtual customer service agent. And now she can work from home, take care of her kids, and not have to pay the money in gas. And she's actually making 25% more working from home than she was at the gas station before she started with Samaschools. So as we continue to collect some of the longer term data, we'll be reporting that out.
Thank you, Tess. There is one more question from a participant that would love to address. What a great question. What embarrassing failure of recent years have you most embraced into the narrative of your organization and hopefully laugh about by now? And how has it changed your outlook or work? Leila, would you like to take that one?
Sure. Well, I'm assuming this one is for me, and in terms of embarrassing failures, there are too many to recount here. But I'll share one thing which I think has been my most profound learning as an entrepreneur, which I think relates to a lot of people in the Valley. I read the Steve Jobs biography by Walter Isaacson, and I remember bringing it in, and someone on the team was like, "Oh my God, you're the last person that needs to read that biography." And I think that's going to do really bad things for the culture of Silicon Valley. And sure enough, I, consciously or not, started adopting, I think, a management style that really didn't match our true values as an organization and our culture. And I think that I sort of absorbed some bad management practices from that. So I will go on the record and say that my most embarrassing failures, I think, have been people related and related to naivety and probably like more ego than I should have had in prior years at Sama. And it's definitely been embraced into the narrative of our organization. I think we've grown a lot as a company. I've grown a lot, hopefully, as a leader, and I think we do laugh about some of the early follies that I committed as a manager. I think it's profoundly changed our outlook and work. First off, I think we've built a really phenomenal management team full of people who are far better managers than I am, who've taught me a lot about how to lead an organization with empathy. and how to make sure that the values that we really try to promote for the people we help, we also try to promote within the organization and with each other. And I think that's filtered out into the fact that we now have someone who's a dedicated HR person internally who helps us resolve conflicts. We have, I think, a pretty different working style than we did in the past. And I think most importantly, we've realized that some lessons from Silicon Valley work really well for a younger nonprofit, but we don't necessarily want to adopt everything from Silicon Valley culture wholesale.
Great, thank you, and thank you, team. So thanks to those of you who submitted your questions. If there's something that we didn't get to during this call, please feel free to email me at leila.toplic@samagroup.co, and I'll have someone on the leadership team get back to you. And this brings us to the close of today's call. We'll be sharing the call recording and slides as a follow-up. And do remember that this is the first call in a series of calls that we'll be hosting on a quarterly basis. Please invite your networks and mark your calendars for August 14, where we'll be sharing highlights and key learnings from Q2. And thank you for listening in. We hope you found this information both interesting and useful. We'd love to hear from you, so please email any feedback and questions to me. And thank you very much, and goodbye.